Thank everyone for coming to our February 17th special call meeting. At this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Burden if she would lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion to approve our agenda for today.
Motion we approve the agenda.
I second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, we're into 2C. So at this time, I'm going to ask Dr. Lewis if he would give the board and our public an update on the changes in the North Carolina Safe School Toolkit that were recently done.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So on February 10th, we received an updated version of the Strong Schools NC Public Health Toolkit for K-12 schools. The effective date for these changes is Monday, February 21st. So the changes I will describe for you take effect on Monday of next week. There are two major changes in the toolkit, and both of them are positives for our students and our staff. The first major change is that individual contact tracing is no longer required. When a reported positive comes in, we are no longer required to contact trace and identify quote-unquote close contacts. Second major change, as a result of that, we are no longer required to exclude asymptomatic people even after they have been identified as close contacts by us or someone else. So, for example, a family member of a student tests positive, they live in the same home. As long as they remain asymptomatic, they no longer have to be excluded from school. So this is very good news for us. Those are the two major takeaways. Both of those help us. I do think it's important while we're speaking both to the board and to the public to mention that regardless of any decisions you may make based on this change, the transportation piece, where we've always been required to have students masked appropriately on our school buses because of a federal guideline that governs transportation in general, that remains in place for our school buses regardless of this toolkit, regardless of any changes that you may decide to make on your masking policy.
And the governor can't change that, right, because it's federal?
Correct.
I believe that's true.
That's from the CDC, isn't it?
Yes, the CDC order.
What is the date? I think that has an expiration date on that. Do you know what the date is on that?
I can look for it.
I think it's actually coming up fairly soon, if I'm not mistaken.
Let me look and I'll
Okay,
get
thank
back
you.
to you in a second.
Anything else of significant change?
Those are the two biggest changes, that effective Monday, we no longer contact trace or required to contact trace, and we no longer have to exclude asymptomatic people, students or staff.
Okay. So while Mackenzie's looking at, I think also we need to discuss, even though we're required to do it, hopefully we're going to get some good news by the end of the day about a lot of things in reference to masking and what we've been required to do. But as a board, I think this board wanted to look at possibly doing away with the 8% threshold that we now have in place and going back to only mask optional. So, I mean, let's open it up for discussion. Mr. Latham, Ms. Burden, Mr. Henderson, board members, Ms. Strickland.
Would it be appropriate to make the motion and then go into the discussion, or would you prefer to discuss first?
Well, I
Either
don't
or.
think it matters either way.
Either or.
I think we could have the discussion, and then if we still feel strongly about it, we can make the
Okay.
motion and vote. So,
Sounds good. My discussion is simply, I would like to see us do away with the 8%, any cap on masking, just mask optional across the board.
that's as fair as we can be. If you want your student to wear a mask, that's fine. If you don't want them to wear a mask, then that's obviously your parental right.
Yep.
So, Mr. Latham.
Well, I agree with that, and one of the simple reasons for that is I think we need to align ourselves with the Strong Schools Toolkit, which says that children no longer, even if they're not masked, as long as they're asymptomatic, they don't have to be sent home. And I think we've been trying real hard on this board for a long time to make sure that healthy children aren't being sent home, and this takes care of that. Because if you're asymptomatic, you get to stay. And that's the bottom line, because the kids need to be in school. And parental guidance on masks is parental guidance on masks.
Any other discussion, comments? I would just like to say thank you to this board, because we've been in a pretty tough situation for the last 2 years. I think this board has been proactive and out in front of what others are doing in the state. It's just like mask optional. We've been mask optional for what now? You know, we got other districts across the state that are just now deciding that they're gonna go mask optional. So I think it's been, you know, to keep the parents and students' interest at heart and to keep kids in the classroom. I just think that I'd like to applaud the board for the work that you've done and the decisions we've made, so. Any other discussion? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we go mask optional with no mandated percentage requirement, no anything other than parental choice, to go in effect with the changes in the toolkit starting on the 21st of February.
I'd second that.
Motion and a second?
May I ask for a clarification?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, the clarification I was gonna ask for is, right now, we have there will be 2 schools that even as of Monday, in order to finish their 14-day period under the old rule, would be expected to continue. Is it your intent that masks become optional regardless of any other standard set effective Monday? Or would you expect them to finish their 14 days?
I don't expect them to finish their 14 days. If there are people that have been sent home and they're asymptomatic, then they should be back in school on Monday. And I don't have a problem with that.
I'll be honest with you, I'd like us to start going mask optional as of tomorrow morning, even for those 2 schools. But, I mean, as far as the whole board goes, that one I'll wiggle till Monday.
So we can do that, but we still have to contact trace until Monday.
Yes. Any case
But
reported to
one
us
day of school.
tomorrow.
Well,
will
you
have
really
to be
should
contact traced.
You really should have 2. No contract tracing and not to exclude. So if we have not excluded anyone that wasn't,
Yeah, they can come back.
They can come back. Yeah,
yeah.
so we would
So
rescind the current.
So what I would say is to align ourselves with the toolkit, starting Monday morning, the 21st of February, Wayne County Public Schools, all schools will be mask optional, and those that were above the threshold and hadn't finished their 14 days are no longer under that 14-day requirement.
I'd agree with that.
And students and staff who are asymptomatic and
Yes,
have not yet finished the exclusion period, that
Are
exclusion
allowed-
period no longer applies.
if you are asymptomatic, that no longer applies.
Am I right about that? Help us out.
Can you make a new motion that's clearer and a little bit more definite on
Okay.
what action you want the board to vote on?
Okay, I'll rescind what I said earlier.
Okay,
Then I'll make a motion that starting Monday, February 21st, all Wayne County Public Schools will be mask optional, including those that are currently under the threshold restrictions of 8%. If they are in appliance with the Strong Schools Toolkit, if you are asymptomatic and you've been sent home, you are allowed to come back to school that day. Does that make more sense?
it does.
I will second it with a question first. How will that affect, because he said all schools, the one on Wayne Community College campus?
Wayne Early Middle College, we operate as guests on their campus. We will have to follow
That-
Wayne Community College.
That doesn't change, yes.
Correct, so even though we're saying all schools, it would have to be
With the exception.
With the exception of Winches, yes.
Of Winches.
Yes.
I know where she's trying to get at home
They'll
in,
continue to follow whatever Wayne Community requires.
Oh, yeah.
which is required too, so.
With
Okay,
with the exception of the Wayne Early Middle College.
Okay, so can you repeat the motion back to me?
Make a motion that all Wayne County Public Schools, with the exception of Wemches, starting the morning of February 21st, in accordance with the North Carolina Strong Schools Toolkit, will be mask optional to include all students and staff that are asymptomatic that haven't finished their 14 days yet.
Okay, and
No
then-
threshold required, in other words.
Sorry, what were you
I'm
gonna
waiting
say?
to see from you, once it's good enough.
I also want to remind you that masks are required on school transportation, so that should be included.
Well, I think that's a separate thing based on federal, isn't it? Federal requires that
Right,
on school buses, students
needs
will
to be
wear
stated
masks.
by the
It
board.
needs to
Right.
be stated so it can be clear, and
Okay.
they don't assume
In
that.
addition.
In addition,
okay, I still think we need to make the motion clearer. I'm not sure that everyone knows what is being considered and about to be voted on.
okay.
Mackenzie, what have you got written down so far?
I've got, let's see. The motion is that starting Monday, February 21st, all Wayne County public schools, with the exception of,
Wayne Early
Wemches.
Middle College.
Early
yeah.
middle.
Wemches.
okay, will be mask optional, including those that are, I have ... can come back in accordance with the Strong Schools Toolkit if they're asymptomatic, something. So that tells me that the motion isn't clear. It needs to be something that we can all understand, we know what's being voted on, et cetera.
Okay, in your wording, how do you think it should read?
That's for the board to decide.
Okay, can we name the two schools and be specific about them?
How about this? Let's think about this for a minute. Because really what you're trying to do is end the masking requirement for schools who are at an 8% exclusion rate or higher.
Yes. And ending
Let's
the
vote on
8%
it.
exclusion
Why don't
rate
we
or
vote on
higher,
one at a time?
period.
So why don't, can we do two motions?
Yeah.
One, to go ahead and do that, and then the second one to pull out whoever is currently under,
And so really what you're doing is you're saying effective Monday the 21st, the requirement for masking at schools with an exclusion rate of 8% or higher ends. And masks will be optional on all Wayne County Public Schools campuses. And then the second thing you're doing is you
with the
are-
exception of Wemches.
Well,
Well, that's
that's not
the
our
campus.
campus.
Yeah,
what
that's
it's
true,
all
that's
Wayne
true.
County Public Schools campuses.
That
Yep.
would cover that.
And then the second thing I think you're trying to do is end exclusions for asymptomatic students and staff effective April 21st. And so you had mentioned 14 days. Well, not all exclusion periods are 14 days. So I don't think you want to be specific to that. You're just saying that if you're currently at home excluded, then on April 21st, that ends as long as you are asymptomatic.
February
February
21st.
21st, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Then you are as long as you're asymptomatic.
Yes.
That sounds better.
Am I getting any better?
Yes.
But I think the other caveat is the issue about the school transportation.
So I would ask whether or not that requires a motion of the board, because we don't even have any choice over that.
I think
We
you could
just
just
wanna
add it
state
to your
publicly.
motion,
Yeah, we will
if you're
continue
saying
to follow.
generally,
You can say with the understanding
understanding
that
that-
buses are still under the
Federal
federal
guidelines
guidelines.
of masking.
I mean,
required
right,
masking.
and
Yep.
generally, you're just saying masks are optional except on school transportation.
School transportation.
Right.
That's
That's
Okay,
it.
You
That's
want to add that to the motion, and then we'll vote on one motion and be, should take care of.
So what is the motion?
All right,
What you
let's
said
try, let's
about
try it
the-
again. I'm gonna try to make this as simple as possible, as painless as possible. In accordance with the North Carolina Strong Schools Toolkit, and no longer required to do contact tracing, I make a
I don't think
motion.
you- I don't think you need that.
I'm just saying, I'm making a motion that on 21 February, all Wayne County Public School campuses will be mask optional and that all current staff and students that have been excluded from school, if they are asymptomatic, can return to school on the 21st.
Okay, 1 second. Okay,
With the understanding that masks are required on school transportation.
I think that reads to imply that that exception only applies to those who have been excluded but are asymptomatic.
I think that's what I said, yes.
Right, but it applies to every student.
Every student, yes.
So, I would suggest including it at the beginning. Right now, you are making a motion that on February 21st, 2022, all Wayne County public school campuses will be mask optional, and then I would include except on school transportation. And all current staff and students that have been excluded from school, if they are asymptomatic, can return to school on February 21st, 2022. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll say that is my motion.
Okay.
And I will second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? 5-2. Ms. Burden and Ms. Henderson being no votes. Are you good?
I got it. Yes, thank you.
Okay, did you find out if there's a expiration to the CDC's
So
transportation requirements?
the order only states that it'll remain in effect until modified based on specific public health or other considerations, or until the Secretary of Health and Human Services rescinds the determination under a specific section.
Okay, thank you for clarification.
Okay. All right, with that, we need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, raise your right hand. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.